Long before Europeans ever set foot on this continent, there was a rich and thriving method of communication that didn't involve the tongue, but involved these. If you think about it, at that time, there were literally hundreds of different dialects. So you have some major linguistic groups like Iroquoian, Algonquin, and they could communicate to some degree with one another, but not to other tribes outside of those linguistic groups. So signing became a universal language. A good example that comes to mind is in the Corps of Discovery. We think of Lewis and Clark setting off to the west into this unknown country. What did they take along with them? A person that can sign. Her name was Sacagawea, a heroine actually of that expedition, because without her, well, it's quite likely they might have perished either from starvation or aggressive tribes that didn't like them there. She was Shoshone, able to use sign in groups that weren't in that Shoshone linguistic group. So at the School of the Longhunter last week, I had the privilege of interviewing a couple of fellows that are trying to keep that silent language alive. I learned a lot. You can't go to the School of Longhunter and not. But again, if you think about the importance, everything they needed, from diplomacy to settling disagreements to storytelling, trade was obviously the most important one, was done with a silent language using just these. So I'm sitting here with Paul Mullins. Paul, pleasure. And Jake Curry. And I'm going to get a wee bit of a lesson today because these two gentlemen both sign. You're from Montana now?
Yes,
Paul?
sir.
And you live in beautiful West Virginia?
Beautiful downtown sprawling metropolis of West Virginia.
And you would be half Mohawk, Haudenosaunee
that's right.
Nation.
That's correct.
And you are an avid mountain man now, I guess, if you're living in Montana.
Yes, sir.
So what fascinated me about sign language is that it was the universal language, right? And I'm thinking of the Lewis and Clark expedition where Sacagawea does a lot of interpretation, but when they're meeting Lakota and Blackfoot and Nez Perce and Crow, whatever, they had to have some way of communicating. And you guys are going to give me a slight demonstration in how that was done?
Splendid.
I look forward to it. I'll get out of your way.
Okay. White. Trade. Shoot. Beaver.
Friend.
Friend. Friend.
Yep. Indian friend.
Indian friend. Yeah.
White man. Me. Trade. You. Gun.
Gun. Long
Knife.
knife.
Trade.
Trade.
Fur.
Fur.
Pelt.
You called
Paul. Long knife.
mm,
You
me
call
called long fire. Now is it like this or is it like this?
this.
Like this. Long fire.
On fire. You know, it was almost a universal communication between the Mississippi and the Rocky Mountains because there were so many language groups with different cultures,
Yeah,
and they had to have a method of communicating with each other.
then Lewis and Clark are going all the way up.
And
the
encountering
Missouri.
all these different cultures and different individuals.
All the way, and the Mandans as well.
Man,
Yeah.
they go all the way, you know, to the Nez Perce, to Flathead. You encounter those.
Yeah. How would you sign for Nez Perce?
Nez Perce is Indian.
Indian?
No.
Pierce nose.
Yeah, Pierce nose.
Pierce nose.
And then
And the flathead would be
Indian, and I believe,
Probably-
I show you push this.
because the children generally, as they're infants, are put in these cradles with the board pressing down on them to flatten their head a little bit.
And we have so many different groups, so like you make the sign for Indian. Black feet. The Blackfeet. There was one that encountered with Lewis and Clark on that. And then we have Indian.
Big
Roval,
belly.
the big belly.
At Cena's.
Yeah, and the story is this means Indian of the waterfall.
Okay.
But the whites interpreted it as being big bellies.
Big bellies.
Big belly.
Isn't that funny? Huh?
Again, miscommunication, understanding of what someone was trying to convey to them at the time.
The Crow had wore their hair in a particular style. So the sign for Crow would be...
Crow is, you make the sign for Indian, and this is for Crow.
Their pompadour.
To show the pompadour that they would stand up and they could be readily identified at 100 meters away.
Yeah. And then this right here. This is possibly being the biggest fox squirrel I've ever seen. So I cut the tail off. The squirrel. Sign for
Squirrel is this. And if you look at these, there's a lot of logic in the signs for them, because how does a squirrel look at you? Peeks around the tree, darting behind it.
That's right. Yeah. Now, would it be like this, the tree,
tree.
or would the tree bite like that?
I was taught with a fist, so it could be this or this. Mm-hmm. But I think it, again, one thing I've observed is sometimes there's colloquial with how they do things, for laughing. I've seen it done this way.
Yeah.
And then, but I've also seen it done this way. So.
Yeah. Well, we just got done having a big feed. And before, I was hungry. And so if somebody was to ask me if I was hungry, I think the sign for that would have been...
You
cut off at the belly.
Yep, cut at the belly.
Yeah, just like hungry.
It also falls in for the month of February. Moon,
the hungry moon.
Hungry moon. So the counting was interesting. I find very interesting with them.
Oh, yeah.
You always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But if you were counting, if you would say, went in, trade 4 dog or 4 horse. Trade 4 horses.
Yeah.
Gun.
For gun, yeah.
No, so but you count from left to right, is from my understanding.
Okay. And like 4 guns for a horse. Or no, 4
horses for a gun.
That would be considered a good trade. Yeah. And if you wanted it was a bad trade, it would be like you're throwing it away.
That's how I always remembered you.
Yeah. From the heart.
Yeah. And
throwing it away.
No good for you. You can do this too, as all is good for my heart.
All is good for my heart.
I was taught by a Blackfoot. This is from the heart. All is good. You can say that from my heart. It is good. See, point from your eye, the corner of your eye with your thumb. Because I was taught pointing with your forefinger.
It's bad.
It's
rude.
Yeah, it's rude. So you always point with your thumb.
Yeah.
And that is considered the polite way of doing it.
I can see that your words are of iron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is good that people like you and me should meet in the game of life and death. Something like that.
Love that. So the animals always fascinated me because they are so descriptive. So when you look at this, the coyote hide, when you taught me, you do the sign for wolf.
Wolf.
And then you do little wolf.
Little wolf.
And then bobcat. I find it funny. You push the nose back, and then you sign for short tail. And then for the mountain lion is cat again, and then the long tail.
Like that. Yeah.
I think it's the logic that was put behind these symbols is amazing.
Now this is the first one I learned as far as the bison or buffalo. Mm-hmm. Of course, we all have seen Dances with Wolves, and when they're going like this, they're going to Tonka. Well, that was, of course, we knew, we kind of got an idea. That's what they were talking about, was the buffalo. Yeah. When they were talking about a bear, I believe it'd be more like this.
This is, I've seen bear done, and you can just do a descriptive.
Or like this.
You do the black and the small ears. Bear. And then you do the sign for bear, and then hump for a grizzly,
Oh, you can do that.
to distinguish between the two. You
The
do
real bear.
Yeah,
Some of the peoples call it the real bear.
the real bear.
The real bear, yeah. Like all the ungulates, like the deer.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one?
Deer.
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
Well, see, yeah, but the elk is different because it kind of, they kind of go
Yep.
back like that. And then moose was like real palm.
With the palm, with that's
Yeah.
how I thought when I was taught it was always to do it with the palm. It's like you're
It's
holding
like a real
something.
like big, I mean, there's no movement like as of a bull moose or anything. I think it's just palm. We were squirrel hunting one time, and I was hunting with a fella, and he got my attention, and then he goes, I see one, and it was signal for squirrel, and then I think he did this, and I said, yeah, I didn't know, I saw it too, but I didn't want to say anything, right? So I just kind of gave him the thumbs up side.
I think rabbit is this.
Okay, well, that
I
makes
think,
sense,
but-
yeah. And pronghorn antelope?
You open them, I believe.
Yeah, the
If we-
pronghorn?
Yeah.
Or would it be,
Maybe you may. I
More
think
like
you're right.
this?
I think that's it.
because it would look more like prongy?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Fish.
You come towards you.
Coming towards you.
Going away is river.
River, right.
River. Yeah, river is this way. This is fish.
And then there's something about water. Water. Water.
Yeah, water.
Because you're going to
Yeah,
drink.
as you're going to drink.
And then so you could try water. The size of it, you would sort of like this would be
For pond or lake.
pond
Yeah.
or lake. Yeah. If you were going to be walking, it'd be like,
This is for if I was going to steal from you, you raise and you pull out. You're reaching under the edge
Yeah.
of the tent and taking something. And
if I was to give you something,
isn't it gift? Is it this?
gift?
I think is this gift?
I think it's gift is like this.
Yeah, I
I
think-
could be wrong. Don't quote me on this. But this right here, because I'm looking behind you and I see the trap. I think that would be like a trap.
For trap or
For trap.
Trap.
Yeah, trap,
beaver
beaver. That'd be like
today?
I could say, I trap to
Beaver.
beaver. Landscapes. What would be, say, a mountain?
Mountains.
Mountains. And doing this would signify.
Which implies like the Rockies, high, tall, jagged
Rockies.
mountains.
Okay. A common thing that one would have is when you're cold, you're shaking.
This is just winters. How many winters?
Yeah.
You do this sign for winters. For how old are you?
How old are you?
Question. You. Winters.
Yeah, then I could say, well, just manage. Just don't ask, my age.
They counted by winters with age.
Yeah, okay. And so, like, being cold, I would need something to
A blanket. Or robe. I think
Robe.
the proper
Yeah.
term would be robe.
Again, trying to be very definite with your coffee.
Coffee. As you make this sign for crazy and black medicine.
Crazy black medicine?
Yeah.
See now, remember the grinding machine?
That's one that they showed. Is Tompkins, I think, shows this
Yeah, because they had the grinding
Yeah.
machine back then. Tobacco.
tobacco.
Big trade item. Something about
Isn't
Like
it the sprinkle?
sprinkle in tobacco, and then there's a pouch. So you go like a little pouch or a container or something like that.
So I think in some of these, if you didn't know the word, you could still make yourself understood with like fire,
Yeah,
water.
water, fire water.
We-
There you go. Yeah,
Because I'm sure there's a term specifically for
trade, fire, water.
Gentlemen, that was absolutely fascinating. I thank you. I'm curious how you would, in sign, say, maybe not verbatim, but how you would say thanks for sharing your knowledge or where your knowledge is coming from. How would you do this?
I would say good
Good.
talk,
Talk,
friend.
friend.
Wow.
Good talk, friend.
Well, I'm sure glad I came down here because I've met a couple of good friends. Jake, this has been a pleasure. Paul,
Thank you, Peter.
before I let you go, because I could listen to this most of the evening, but it seems like a rather a niche thing. Like, are you the only two that are signing, or are there more of you out there?
Oh, there's way more of us out there. People that are like way more, like, say, knowledgeable in this sort of this art, as it were. This language is way more fluent and knowledgeable. Like, others of us are on a learning path.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's real fascinating. It's a neat thing to keep going. It's like learning music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta use it.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying there's groups like you belong
There's
to.
there's actually a program at Kuntai University in Montana where they're teaching it, and there's several videos on YouTube. There's a young man from Montana. He's deaf, and he'll do a side-by-side video comparison of American Sign Language with Plains Indian Sign Language. There's a good Facebook group, Plains Indian Sign Language Facebook group.
There's
an
also
amazing
a book,
resource.
A book.
There's several books.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of them is Tompkins'
Yeah,
book. I don't know. Yes, his name is Tompkins.
Yep, and then there was Cook, who served with the U.S. Army and during the Indian campaigns, and he documented a lot of these. There's several videos of him actually speaking with natives in the early 20th century on YouTube.
You were saying, Paul, that you try to learn 3 a day or something.
3 a week. I've
3
tried
a
to commit
week.
myself to learn 3 signs a week.
And you're the American Mountain Man Association. Am I getting that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Mike Spacek was saying that you had to become a member. You have to be able to give 50 signs, I believe he said, and you have to receive 50 signs that you can understand and interpret.
Yeah, something to that effect. I believe out of 200 signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The AMM is one of the historical groups that actually makes you learn to achieve different levels. It reminds me a lot of the Boy Scout program.
Best
Yeah.
groups, and there are for sure. This has been wonderful, guys. I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
How do you say in Haudenosaunee?
Niawan.
Ojibwe would say ane,
One, eh?
and in Montana, Cowboy would say
Uh,
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks,
Thanks,
partner.
guys. This has been great.